It's becoming more and more obvious that the USA are pushing for a war with China. The reason, however, may surprise you. The answer, the US dollar. It's due to the dominance of the US dollar that the USA became such a powerful economic nation with a huge military presence across the world. And in this video, I'm going to explain why the USA are prepared to go to war for it. First, a little bit of history of why the US dollar rose to such prominence in the first place. After the end of World War II, the USA controlled around half of the world's productive capacity. However, devastated by war, the US allies were not able to pay for US exports. To solve this problem, the US set up two organisations, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These two organisations were used to create a global financial framework that in turn gave the US a huge amount of power as the world's creditor under the guise of multilateralism. This in turn established the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Over the coming years, the US budget deficit began to grow, mainly as a result of the massive military spending it was using to suppress countries around the world which were seen as obstacles to US capital expansion into foreign markets. Now, due to these large budget deficits, gold started flowing back into Europe. So in 1971, the US broke the link between gold and the US dollar. At that time, no countries were willing to call the bluff of the USA, since crashing the dollar would have been devastating to export industries in surplus countries. Also, around the same time, the USA agreed to militarily support Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries in exchange for them pricing their oil in US dollars, even further establishing the dollar as the world's dominant currency. Hence, countries like Japan, Germany and the UK had no option but to recycle their excess dollars back into the US by buying up treasuries, thus further solidifying the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Dollar recycling allowed the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low, incentivizing US investors to borrow more, which in turn they lent to developing countries in desperate need of capital, while leveraging their near-monopoly position on credit. The dominance of the US dollar has meant that the US has been able, up until now, to keep the rest of the developing world subservient to them, while at the same time extracting much of their resources and giving little back in return. Okay, so what does this all have to do with China, and why does the USA see China as such a threat? Well, as China developed and its economy grew, so did its ability to lend to developing countries. However, China's loans to these developing countries generally came with better terms and did not require those countries to undergo structural adjustments like those loans provided by either the World Bank or the IMF. This alternative source for loans allows a route for these countries to develop without having to be subservient to the USA or to feel threatened by the USA. If developing countries are able to build a base level of self-sufficiency and freely trade with other countries in their own currencies, then the US's dominance will fade away. And this is the reason why China is seen as such an existential threat to the USA. Not because of its growing military, or because they do not operate a Western-style democracy, and not even because the West thinks they will invade Taiwan. It's all because China is a threat to the US dollar dominance and the USA's financial monopoly. The US's campaign to isolate China has been underway for many years, as clear signs of the China-led economic alternative emerged around a decade ago. However, recent events have accelerated the timeline for the prospect of war. Firstly, in 2016, China surpassed the USA's economy to become the largest economy in the world when GDP is adjusted for purchasing power, and will more than likely surpass the USA in raw GDP terms sometime in the next decade or possibly sooner. Secondly, China and Russia are growing closer by the day, which is something the USA neither expected or wanted. Thirdly, China's military is fast reaching near-peer status with the US. Considering the huge defence advantage China would have in repelling a US attack, forcing the US to extend their naval forces across the entire Pacific Ocean. Fourth, BRICS, the SCO and the BRI, organisations and initiatives that are all about industrialisation and infrastructure investment, are quickly gaining traction amongst developing countries. Especially concerning to the USA is the BRICS organisation. This is an alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The combined population of these countries is 3.2 billion, which is 42% of the world's population, and the group accounts for 30% of the world's GDP. Additionally to this, there are many other countries lining up to join BRICS, including Argentina, Indonesia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Nigeria, Sudan, and numerous others. A number of these countries have already applied to join the organisation. However, as yet, BRICS has not officially announced the list of applicants or the criteria for admission. The BRICS Alliance has also set up NDB, New Development Bank. Officially launched in 2015, headquartered in Shanghai, its aim is to provide finance and resources for infrastructure and development projects in BRICS countries, other emerging economies and developing countries, thus offering an alternative to the IMF and World Bank, which until quite recently have been the only viable option. Each of the founding members of BRICS have both equal shares and equal voting rights in NDB, which is in stark contrast to both the IMF and the World Bank, which is often criticised for disproportionately favouring developed countries, especially the USA, giving them significant influence over policies and decision making. Having the US dollar as the world's reserve currency has given the USA a great deal of leverage over other countries. The USA has not shied away from weaponising the dollar and has imposed dollar sanctions on Iran, Venezuela, Syria and others. However, the USA took dollar weaponization to a whole new level at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022, when the US illegally froze Russia's sovereign foreign reserves held in US banks. This action was a step too far by the USA, and it is not only a blatant disregard for international law and norms, as sovereign assets are supposed to be immune from seizure or interference by other countries, but also undermines the trust and stability of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. This has been a wake-up call for many countries whom are now rapidly assessing their dollar holdings and are seeking alternatives to the US dollar. In recent years, we have seen the Chinese yuan increasing its share of world trade. As part of its Belt and Road Initiative, China has signed bilateral currency swap agreements with 22 countries and established RMB clearing arrangements in 8. Between January 21 and January 22, settlements in Chinese RMB have doubled in volume to now become the fourth largest, accounting for 3.2% of worldwide settlements. Although this is still small compared to the US dollar settlements, use of the yuan for international trade is growing rapidly. China are now doing considerably more trade with Russia, and a large portion of that trade will be settled in Chinese yuan. China are also in negotiations with Saudi Arabia with regards to breaking the petrodollar monopoly and looking towards pricing some of their oil contracts in RMB. It really makes no sense that now China is Saudi Arabia's largest oil customer for China to be paying for that in oil in US dollars. Anyway, now back to BRICS. It is strongly rumoured that the BRICS countries are working on creating a new reserve currency based on a basket of their own currencies as a way of reducing their dependence on the US dollar. According to Vladimir Putin, who announced the plan at the 14th BRICS summit in 2022, BRICS countries are ready to work with all fair partners on developing a new global reserve currency, and said that BRICS countries are working on building a joint financial infrastructure that would enable such a currency to be created. If BRICS does indeed launch this new currency, and if BRICS is expanded with the new countries that wish to join, then I believe this new currency will be a serious challenge to the US dollar, as the newly expanded BRICS Plus organisation would represent a large share of both the world's trade and the world's resources, and it would make sense for the trade between them to be conducted in this new currency, hence making the US dollar redundant for inter-country trading between the group. China have long been aware of the US plans to isolate them, and as a result, the Chinese government have been decoupling themselves from the US economy for some time now. However, this has accelerated since the US's tariffs and sanctions began under the Trump administration, and as a result, China's holdings of US Treasury securities have been decreasing at a faster rate since around June 2021. De-dollarization in favour of other currencies will not happen overnight. However, events are now in motion which cannot be stopped. The USA, in weaponizing the dollar, has effectively shot itself in the foot, and I'm sure that many in the US consider writing on the wall. As the US dollar diminishes as the reserve currency of the world, the US economy will face much upheaval and turmoil. The US has currently in excess of $31 trillion of debt. It will also mean the end of the almost $1 trillion a year military budget, which keeps the US's 800 plus military bases around the world funded and which its empire depends on. The consequences of the US dollar losing reserve currency status are unprecedented, and this is exactly why the US are using every tool in their box to keep China down, and the one and only reason they are prepared to go to war with China. We now see the USA accusing China of disrupting the so-called rules-based international order. What's missing is that the rules require the perpetual exploitation of the developing world and the pursuit of profits at the expense of human well-being. The window of opportunity for the US to slow China's rise is rapidly closing, if not closed already. But does this mean the US is really readying itself for an inevitable military confrontation with China? Well, that question is for another video, so stay tuned. I hope this video has given you a little more understanding of why I believe the US wants to go to war with China. I would sincerely like to hear your comments about this down in the comments below, so please leave a comment if you wish to. Hope you did like this video. Give it a thumbs up. If you did, consider hitting that subscribe button to the channel if you haven't already. But as always, for now, take care.